doing a read aloud version for this chapter of Scarlet Letter. You may choose to listen to this or you may not. So just because it's listed under assignments does not mean that you have to listen to it this way. You're fine just reading it on your own too. And just as a bit of a warning, I guess, I'm probably not going to do this perfectly either. So this is my first time reading it out loud and recording it. So we're going to just give it a try and you can let me know what you think. So we are on chapter 14 and it is titled Hester and the Physician. Hester bade little Pearl run down to the margin of water and play with the shells and tangled seaweed until she should have talked a while with yonder gatherer of herbs. So if we're talking about yonder gatherer of herbs, we are talking about Chillingworth. So the child flew away like a bird, and, making bare her small white feet, went pattering along the moist margin of the sea. Here and there she came to a full stop, and peeped curiously into a pool, left by the retiring tide as a mirror for Pearl to see her face in. So here we have that reflection symbolism happening again. So she's looking into a reflection. Forth peeped at her, out of the pool, with dark glistening curls around her head, and an elf smile in her eyes, the image of a little maid whom Pearl, having no other playmate, invited to take her hand and run a race with her. But the visionary little maid, on her part, beckoned likewise, as if to say, "This is a better place, come thou into the pool." And Pearl, stepping in mid-leg deep, beheld her own white feet at the bottom, while out of a still lower depth came the gleam of a kind of fragmentary smile, floating to and fro in the agitated water. So here we've learned a little bit more about Pearl, right? Once again, she's still referred to as elf-like, but we also see her kind of in a sad state with having no other playmate, which gives us kind of a window into her world, right? Her only playmate is her own reflection, and she joins her reflection in the water to play, which might explain a little bit more about Pearl. If she has no friends around her, she doesn't necessarily know how a normal, quote-unquote normal, girl would act. Meanwhile, her mother had accosted the physician. "I would speak a word with you," said she, "a word that concerns us much." "Aha, and it is Mistress Hester that has a word for old Roger Chillingworth," answered he, raising himself from his stooping posture. "With all my heart. Why, mistress, I hear good tidings of you on all hands. No longer ago than yester-eve, a magistrate, a wise and godly man, was discoursing of your affairs, Mistress Hester, and whispered me that there had been question concerning you in the council. It was debated whether or no, with safety to the Commonwealth, yonder scarlet letter might be taken off your bosom. On my life, Hester, I made my entreaty to the worshipful magistrate that it might be done forthwith." So, there's talk now that the letter could be removed from her clothing. "It lies not in the pleasure of the magistrates to take off the badge," calmly replied Hester. "Were I worthy to be quit of it, it would fall away of its own nature, or be transformed into something that should speak a different purport." So she would rather not have it off, but have it either fall off or become maybe something a little bit different with a different meaning to it, which we've already seen a little bit happening, right? "Nay, then, wear it, if it suits you better," rejoined he. "A woman must needs follow her own fancy touching the adornment of her person. The letter is gaily embroidered, and shows right bravely on your bosom." So he's telling her the letter looks nice. All this while Hester had been looking steadily at the old man, and was shocked as well as wonder-smitten to discern what a change had been wrought upon him within the past 7 years. So, first of all, wonder-smitten. Fantastic word right there. And we also learned the past 7 years. So it's been 7 years since he has re-entered into her life, which means, of course, that Pearl now is of the age of 7. It was not so much that he had grown older, For though the traces of advancing life were visible, he bore his age well, and seemed to retain a wiry vigor and alertness. But the former aspect of an intelligent and studious man, calm and quiet, which was what she best remembered in him, had altogether vanished and been succeeded by an eager, searching, almost fierce, yet carefully guarded look. It seemed to be his wish and purpose to mask this expression with a smile, but the latter played him false, and flickered over his visage so diversively that the spectator could see his blackness all the better for it. Ever and anon, too, there came a glare of red light out of his eyes, as if the old man's soul were on fire and kept on smoldering duskly within his breast, until by some casual puff of passion it was blown into a momentary flame. This he represented as speedily as possible, and strove to look as if nothing of the kind had happened. So here we are mixing two of the forms of symbolism that we just talked about, right? We're talking about physical appearance and color symbolism as well. So his physical appearance is deteriorating. He's looking worse, right? He's changed from this calm, quiet, and studious person into somebody who seems to be hiding something. And he's hiding it with kind of a creepy false smile, right? That's very obvious that it's false. So by trying to hide it, he's just making things more obvious that he is indeed trying to hide it. And then we have the glare of red light out of his eyes, as if the old man's soul were on fire. So if we're talking about fire and red, it's a pretty clear, or I think it's an easy jump to say that we're looking at some devil-like aspects, right? In a word, old Roger Chillingworth was a striking evidence of a man's faculty of transforming himself into a devil, if he will only, for a reasonable space of time, undertake a devil's office. So if you're doing the devil's work, you begin to look like the devil, is basically what Hawthorne is saying there. This unhappy person had effected such a transformation by devoting himself for 7 years to the constant analysis of a heart full of torture, and deriving his enjoyment thence, and adding fuel to those fiery tortures which he analyzed and gloated over. The scarlet letter burned on Hester Prynne's bosom. Here was another ruin, the responsibility of which came partly home to her. "What see you in my face?" asked the physician, "that you look at it so earnestly?" "Something that would make me weep if there were any tears bitter enough for it," answered she. "But let it pass. It is of yonder miserable man that I would speak." "And what of him?" cried Roger Chillingworth eagerly, as if he loved the topic and were glad of an opportunity to discuss it with the only person whom he could make a confidant. "Not to hide the truth, Mistress Hester, my thoughts happen just now to be busy with the gentleman, so speak freely, and I will make an answer." "When we last spake together," said Hester, "now 7 years ago, it was your pleasure to extort a promise of secrecy as touching the former relation betwixt yourself and me. As the life and good fame of a yonder man were in your hands, there seemed no choice to me, save be to silent in accordance with your behest. Yet it was not without heavy misgivings that I thus bound myself, for having cast off all duty towards other human beings, there remained a duty toward him, and something whispered me that I was betraying it in pledging myself to keep your counsel. Since that day no man is so near to him as you. You tread behind his every footstep. You are beside him, sleeping and waking. You search his thoughts. You bury and rankle in his heart. Your clutch is on his life, and you cause him to die daily a living death. And still he knows you not. In permitting this, I have surely acted a false part by the only man to whom the power was left me to be true." So a few things going on here in this plea. First of all, she's referring back to their conversation in the prison, right? When she promised that she would not reveal Roger Chillingworth's true identity as her husband. So that's the first thing. Then we have here this excellent source of alliteration, right? Die daily a living death. So we know that Hawthorne is trying to put emphasis on this. She feels like she is causing much harm to Dimmesdale by him not knowing the truth, right? And Chillingworth is living with him, has this access to him. Dimmesdale clearly trusts Chillingworth. So she feels like she's responsible for putting Dimmesdale in a dangerous situation. "What choice had you?" asked Roger Chillingworth. "My finger pointed at this man would have hurled him from his pulpit into a dungeon, thus, peradventure, to the gallows." So the gallows, meaning by Chillingworth not telling, he's actually saving Dimmesdale's life, right? Because if you go to the gallows, that's where you go to die. "It had been better so," said Hester Prynne. "What evil have I done the man?" asked